We're going to do a call to order and now the acknowledgement of traditional lands. Nous reconnaissons que nous sommes accueillis sur les terres des Mississauga, des Anishinaabe, de la Confédération Haudenosaunee et du Wendat. Nous voulons également reconnaître la pérennité de la présence des Premières Nations, des Métis et des Inuits. Miigwech. Please be seated. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any trustees who wish to declare a conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest. I'm not hearing or seeing any, so we will move on to item number 3. What I am suggesting is that we do item 3.1 as a whole, item 3.2 as a whole, and then item 3.34, and then item 3.35, and then item 4. Does that make sense? I'm just asking. Oh, we can do that. Maybe a suggestion from a trustee. I don't know. Trustee Laskin, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we could move 3.35 ahead of 3.34.
Does anyone have any issues with that? The suggestion is to move the business arising motion on the moratorium to before we do the proposed options to balance recommendation that came out of FBEC on Tuesday.
I think procedurally that would be easier since we may suspend the bylaws for the other item.
Okay.
I can second that. Madam Chair, I want to move motion to suspend the bylaw to allow more questions regarding the staff report for the budget 2024-2025. I feel it's so important that is we as trustee, we have to understand the report well before we can really make, this is critical decisions which involve so many cuts. With the details, we don't fully understand what the cuts are. Whether the other cars can be replaced.
So Trustee Pei, Trustee Pei, let me just first deal with reordering the agenda, because right now we're just Trustee Laskin had just asked about reordering the agenda, so I just want to do that one first.
Okay.
And then we'll and then we'll contemplate your request, which I did.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any issues with reordering the agenda so that we deal with the moratorium before we deal with 3.4? Well, not deal with the moratorium. We deal with the motion regarding the moratorium. I wish we could deal. Wouldn't that be great if we could just make changes? But anyways, so the idea is to do 3.35 and then 3.34. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that has carried. With respect to the request to suspend the bylaw, in particular, it's the bylaw around speaking time. At board, a member may speak only once to each motion or matter under consideration and for up to 5 minutes. That's section 5.13.10. So the request has been made, but I do have a question for you, Trustee Pei. I'm assuming you are just asking for this suspension on item number 3.34. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's about the staff report for the budget.
Right. Well, we have multiple staff reports, so I just wanted to be clear that it's that request is just for 3.34, which would, to me, make sense that it would only be for that one item.
I want to discuss the report that we discussed, last Tuesday night. Is this the same report? Story is
This is last Tuesday night.
Do you mean Tuesday, like 2 days ago? That one?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Okay,
so that one has a recommendation in item number 3.34. So when we get to that item, the idea would be to suspend the bylaws, and you could speak to anything in that recommendation, which is quite wide ranging. So
yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So I know that motion was made by you and trustee Shuskandaraja, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we're going to take a vote on that.
We can do it at that time.
Okay, so what we're going to do, trustee Pay, is we're going to put it in eScribe and we'll deal with it when we get to item number 3.34. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Madam Chair.
Okay,
That's fine.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, any other housekeeping notes before we get going? No? All right, so we are on item number 3.1. This is the FBEC, the Finance, Budget and Enrollment Committee Special Meeting Report number 5 from March 19th, 2024. We're looking at items number 1 and 2 in that. And I will just turn it over to the director to introduce this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Associate Director Zucker will present this report.
Thank you, and through the chair. On March 19th, at the FBEC meeting, the special FBEC meeting, there was a report presented for receipt with regards to staff's proposed options to balance, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Trustee Laskin, you are the first and only one on the speaker's list at this moment. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the report.
Is there a seconder for this item? Thank you, Trustee.
I can second it.
Sorry, Patel, Trustee Patel, Trustee Arts got to you first. We will try not
That's
to
fine.
move so quickly.
No worries. Thank you.
Everybody was throwing their hands up on this one. It's apparently very popular. Okay, so with that, we will open the vote.
I'm in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Rose in favor.
Nunziata in favor.
Pay in favor.
Hastings in favor.
Shan in favor.
Trustee Williams in favor.
I'm in favor. I'm just trying to figure out why it's not coming up on eScribe. Okay, and that has carried unanimously, it looks like. Okay, so we are now moving on. Item number 3.2. This is the FBEC Special Meeting Report number 6 from March 26th and 27th. This is for receipt. I will turn it over to the director again to introduce item number 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. So for this regular FBEC meeting on we're talking about the 26th and 27th. Through the chair, on these evenings, we received delegations from the community, and again, happy to present the report or answer any questions.
Are there any questions from trustees on this item? Vice Chair Shen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take this opportunity, since it's a report that is talking about the delegations that we have had over 2 days. I want to just take this moment to thank all of the delegates who came, and over 100 people who actively participated, and many, many more actually sent their written submissions too. So I take this opportunity to thank them for participating in the budget processes, and I would be happy to move it.
Thank you, Trustee Shen. And any other questions, comments? Are there any online? No. Okay, so I have a mover. I'm looking for a seconder for this report, please. Thank you, Trustee Didavides. And we will open the vote on this item.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Pay in favor.
Nunziata in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Gills in favor.
Hastings.
Williams in favor.
McLean in favor.
Anyone else still waiting? Okay, thank you. And I'll just ask at this moment, before we move on to the next item, if any trustees have joined the meeting since we started and did roll call. Okay, we're not, our numbers have not changed. Okay, so next we are moving on to 3.35. This is the business arising motion, lifting the Ministry of Education's moratorium on school closures. And I believe this was moved by Trustee McLean and Trustee Arts. Trustee McLean, would you like to introduce this item by speaking to it?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. The moratorium came into effect in 2017 and has been with us ever since. And in 2018, the top-up funding that that the board would receive to accommodate us for the fact that we operate in a manner that is not as efficient as possible. And since the moratorium has been in place, we no longer have the ability to consolidate schools and put programs in places where we believe they should be. So this motion requests the government to, as there have been multiple requests by multiple people through the years, to request the Ministry of Education withdraw the moratorium. But this goes further than and seeks a exemption for the TDSB to allow for us to consolidate, to go through consolidation processes up to 4 per school year. And this will allow us to better serve the community and create better programming. In 2020, we finalized the secondary school reform. When we finalized that, that calls for secondary schools of between 1,000 and 1,200. And what that does is that ensures size of the number of students that allows for a total gambit of programming. So it means that students will be able to have most of everything that they would want. And in our board, because of the way we're structured, 50% of our students currently, our secondary school students, they currently look for programming in other neighborhoods at other secondary schools. So this will allow us to consolidate some programs, build strong neighborhood schools that allow students to live in their neighborhoods, allows for their communities to be excited about the programs in their communities, not require students to have to seek their dreams of academic excellence 3 neighborhoods away, 2 buses. It is very challenging to be a secondary school student nowadays with all the challenges, the rigorous academic challenges, the challenges of, we hope they have a full experience, which includes extracurriculars and sports and band. Many we know will have part-time employment, and the less time they have to spend in transit going to and from neighborhood communities to seek the very programming that they want, I believe is ideal, and our colleagues did when we passed the secondary school review. This is, the provincial government prides itself on being monetarily responsible and efficient. And at the same time, they mandate that we operate inefficiently and to our monetary detriment. because of our situation, we used to get topped up to the tune of $35.5 million annually, which is going to exceed any of the financial challenges that we're going to discuss tonight, that we have discussed. I've been here 6 years. We've been having the same debate for 6 years, and that amount annually would have alleviated all of those debates every year. Every year, we would have had an opportunity to offer the programming that we believe our students deserve, we think that they need. So this motion seeks to have the government give us the flexibility to better serve the students and families in our district. And I hope my colleagues will strongly consider supporting the motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Arts, as a seconder, would you like to speak next?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. Through you, to my colleagues and to the public. The provincial moratorium on school accommodations or school consolidations was imposed in 2017 by an outgoing government and was never lifted by the current government that's in place. As Trustee McLean said, this government frequently pats itself on the back for finding efficiencies and doing things in a financially stable way. And this is a huge, huge issue for all school boards that actually gets in the way of school boards managing efficiently. It's a very easy thing to do for the province to lift the moratorium. It doesn't require any investment by the province to do this. It doesn't require any work on their part. It just requires them to move forward and allow us to take on school consolidations. It will help us in the long run to build better, stronger school systems. It'll allow us to build the programs, more of the programs that our students want, right-size our system. This is costing us millions of dollars a year that could be used better in our system to support our students. So I think this is a very easy thing to do. I hope that everybody can support me in calling, and Trustee McLean in this motion on calling on the provincial government to lift the moratorium and allow us to work better in our system and save money. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. I'd like to pass the chair to the Vice Chair.
Go ahead, Trustee Cheneslin.
So I'd like to begin just by thanking the mover and the seconder for this motion. I actually think this motion is potentially among the most important and significant motions. If we are to be successful in this, it could be among the most important things that we could do. And I remember back when we passed the secondary review recommendations, we really thought this was something that we could do. These consolidations and changes to programming could have such significant impacts to our secondary students in such profound ways and such profoundly positive ways that it felt like we were on the cusp of doing something so significant. And it's been really frustrating because we've spent the last 4 years waiting. In fact, really since 2018, we've been waiting. And we thought this would come, and we thought this would come. And I do know that this is something the minister knows about. He's well aware. OBSPA has advocated. It's not just Toronto that is keen to see changes on this. And he spoke about it even as recently as this afternoon on the chair's call, on the minister's call with chairs. He actually spoke that he's trying to get this moving forward. What I love about this motion is it isn't simply lift the moratorium. It offers another route to getting there. So I think that's the great thing about this. It is take a look at our situation and consider doing, if you can't lift the moratorium because it doesn't work everywhere in the province, consider these on one-off cases almost and allow us to move forward in an efficient and productive and a way that is a win for communities and a win for students and a win for our budget. But this really isn't about budget. I mean, it is about budget, but it isn't really about budget, because we know that when schools have, a high school has around 1,000 to 1,200 kids, that allows it to have enough staff to offer not just the basics, not just the core courses, but the rich programming that every student not only needs, but deserves. Most kids, they might come to school for that chemistry class or that math class, but it might be that school team or that club, the drama club, who knows what it is that makes that kid get out of bed in the morning and feel excited and welcomed in their school and feel at home and where they meet the kids that they really sync with. So I think this is such an important motion that I am thrilled that it is being brought forward. It's something that I think we need to be talking about front and center. It's something I talk to the minister about when I get the chance. And I see this as consolidations with the potential to either improve one of the sites or to build a new site out of those is a real win for a community and something that everybody can come out of feeling positive. So I really just want to say thank you to the movers. I know this has been a passion project for Trustee McLean for a long time. I remember talking to him when the secondary review came forward, and he said at that time, I actually still remember it, this is why I became a trustee. It was to do the big things for our system that make a difference for kids. This is one of those things. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Shannon. I'll pass the chair back to you.
Trustee Laskin, you're next.
Madam Chair, I rise to add my voice in support for this issue that we have raised consistently every year since it was in place, not only as an individual school board, but through our representatives on the Ontario Public School Boards Association. From a monetary perspective, it really is unconscionable that the current situation really has caused unsustained deficits. It costs the same to run a school half full as it does full in terms of heat and light and keep the lights on. And the monetary deficit it has caused is equal to the fact of the top-up funding. That was $35 million we were getting each and every year. Over the last 5 years even, that adds up to $177 million. Think about the reinvestments that could be made. Think about, in doing the consolidations, the new facilities that could be built, the programming for kids. And the other unintended consequences, you know, since grade 13 was eliminated, we have too many buildings. So it's about programming for kids right-sized in schools that provide that programming. But it also is, how can we repurpose these buildings through the Toronto Lands Corporation for long-term care facilities or workforce housing? There are, or multi-generational, my goal as a trustee would to see a school, a childcare, and a long-term care home on the same site, all nurturing each other. And we can't do that. We can't do that with the moratorium still on. So it is about money, but it's not about the money from a budget perspective. It's the money that it costs in the programs that we can't implement. And it is those programs that really is the core here. It's student achievement and well-being. So I mean, we have tried the lift the moratorium. Now, thanks to this motion, we're at least trying, if you can't lift the moratorium, at least allow us to do 4 consolidation projects a year. That will make a huge difference, not only to our bottom line, but to opportunities for students across the system. Each of these takes a while because there is an absolute process involved that would involve community. And I know that we can engage those communities in meaningful dialogue to make a much better system of secondary school opportunities across the board. So I'm in complete support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Trustee Earhart, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I may appear an unlikely supporter of this motion, but I'm very supportive of this motion. I think it aligns very well with the idea of seeing alignment. And certainly my understanding of the current government's mandate is to prevent government from getting in the way of efficiency for our broader public service, for our broader public good. And I think this is an excellent example of thinking innovatively and how we can come together in an innovative way to reduce burden, to enhance efficiency, to enhance service for students. I may not agree on every project that comes forward, but I very much agree with the principle that we should all be thinking innovatively on how we can best serve students within scarce resources. And so I will continue to fight for more resourcing, but I will also very much support initiatives where we can reduce regulatory burden at the provincial level that is preventing our board from operating as we know we best can in the service of students and making efficient use of public resources. And so thank you very much, the movers, and I hope this will inspire our provincial government to also think innovatively and work with us in this space. Thank you.
Are there any trustees online who wish to speak to this motion?
Hastings.
Okay, please go ahead, Trustee Hastings.
Thank you for allowing me the thought of supporting McLean, Arts, Laskin. I see the idea behind their means, and the only way I would not be willing to support this is if this went off into a frivolous, non-supportive way. But in the mean terms, I do support the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hastings. And seeing no other speakers on the list, sorry, Trustee Williams, and then we'll go to Trustee McLean, who I believe would like to close.
Thank you. I also just want to express my gratitude and thanks to the movers of this motion. It's incredibly important. And for, the minister and anyone listening, I think this is really, really something that it's innovative, and having the option of not only just lifting the moratorium and the option of TDSB being provided an exemption, I think it's like a no-brainer, to be honest. It's such an opportunity to support our students, to support this idea of community hubs, to increase programming, right-sizing our schools. So I'm so grateful that this motion is before us, and I will be in support of this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. And now on to Trustee McLean, who will close.
Again,
Chairman, additional comments before the mover make closing comments?
Sure, please go ahead, Trustee Pei.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really want to say a kudos to my fellow trustees, McLean and Arts, for bringing this very important motion to allow us to not even to have more savings for our budget, but also allow us to operate our school more efficiently. So I want to stress this two keywords: efficiency and saving. We're all here for our children's education, and we always struggle with the budget deficit every year. So I hope this important motion would bring us forward in the future years. We will have more financial flexibilities and provide the best environment and the best program to our children because they deserve it. Thank you again, Trustee McLean and Trustee Arts. I wholeheartedly support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Pei. And now I believe I feel like we need a drum roll for you, Trustee McLean, but please go ahead.
Thank you, and again, through the chair. In the it's been 3.5 years since we passed the secondary school reform. And if you think about that in time, that brilliant idea that we were all excited about, it's been sitting in a drawer for 3.5 years. And to get a sense of what that's cost us is every year following a consolidation plan and we close a school, we save in the neighborhood of $585,000. So while it's been sitting in the drawer, it's going to have cost us over $14 million in savings in the time and the benefit we would have had just by starting the process. I want to acknowledge, though, while I'm chasing the revenue, because to sit in this horseshoe means you're constantly chasing revenue, and I feel passionate about the secondary school reform. This also will affect elementary schools. This works well with the TLC modernization strategy and the TDSB's revitalization plan. We talk a lot about student voice and trying to adhere to student voice. And I hope that my colleagues and the ministry and the staff at the ministry that will keep in mind that 50% of our secondary school students are, through their actions, sharing their voice, and they're chasing programs that don't exist in their neighborhoods. And we are quite willing and prepared to create strong neighborhood schools simply if you'll get out of the way and let us. So I respectfully request that my colleagues support, and I equally respectfully request that the ministry grant us the exemption if it's too early for the province-wide lifting of the moratorium. Thank you.
Sure, I will ask governance staff to look after that. Can we do a recorded vote on this? Okay, that has been noted. So we have a mover and a seconder. I don't see any other speakers, so we will now open the vote on item number 3.3.5.
Pay in favor.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Hastings in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Elias in favor. Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee King in favor.
I think Hastings said in favor. Who are we missing?
He certainly did.
Trustee Loka-Rotman and Rajwani, you're just want to check that they're not here? Okay, so let the record show that was unanimous. Okay, we are now on item number 3.3.5. 0.4, sorry, we just finished 5. And Trustee Pay, you wish to move a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been put up on the screen, Trustee Pay, just so you know.
Okay, great.
So there's a motion on the screen to suspend provision 5.13.10, which is with respect to speaking time. And this would allow, normally in a board meeting, we can only speak once on an item. This would allow us to speak more than once on this item on the agenda. Are there any, does anybody wish to speak on this item? And I would just note that we need, I just want to explain, we need 2/3 of members present, so 2/3 of 20 that we have right now, in order for this to, we would need 14 for this to be accepted. And I believe Trustee Suskandaraja is the seconder, just for the record. Can you confirm that, Trustee Suskandaraja?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak? Okay, so I'm not hearing or seeing it. Oh, Trustee Williams, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question of clarification. So the motion is asking to suspend the this provision of the bylaws, but specific to an agenda item. That was my understanding. And specific to which agenda item?
Item number 3.34. So it's the only item left besides adjournment. I'm assuming people don't want to speak more than once on adjournment. That would be fine.
Thank you. I just wanted it to be crystal clear. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sticking around for that debate.
All right. So I'm not sure what that is.
Madam Chair, am I allowed to speak, or is spoken?
If you have more to add, sure. Trustee Pay, if you have more to add, please go ahead. Trustee Pay, do you wish to add more?
Yeah, I just want to speak the importance why I move this motion. I'm not sure, if the other trustee have heard about the reason. Or is all other trustees understand why I move this motion? Why I think it's so important we can discuss, this report, very comprehensive report, very complex report. That's, I want to say, thanks to the staff for their hard work.
Trustee Bay, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
What's before us is not the report. What's before us is the recommendation that came out of that report. So I just want to make sure there's clarity on that for everybody and for you when you're speaking about it.
You're absolutely right. It's a recommendation, based on the report. Yes.
Okay. Feel free to continue. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Sure. I think the staff worked really hard on this. This recommendation is very complex, comprehensive, and I think is every trustee deserves opportunity to ask questions and try to understand, why the staff making the recommendation, which is so crucial for balancing our budget. Especially this report, even after the exhaustive, thinking by the staff, we're still short, on balancing budget for $4.2 million. So I just want, trustees, including myself, to have the opportunities to ask the proper questions, especially detailed questions. Just make sure we all understand what staff really recommend, and whether we agree or not, but at least we have opportunity to ask the questions to understand, the recommendation, so we can make more informed and accurate decision for voting for this recommendation or following is amended motion. That's the reason I really hope my fellow trustees can vote for this motion and suspend, the bylaws just for the time being. And so all of us can really ask the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Pay. Are there any other trustees who wish to speak to this item?
Hastings.
Please go ahead, Trustee Hastings.
I would like to speak to in support of Trustee Tay's wishes to be able to defend the undefendable in many cases. Thank you.
I can't hear what he said. I don't know what he said. Can you, I'm not sure I understood what you said. Could you repeat that, Trustee Hastings?
Yes. In many times, we defend an item. And in so doing, we don't get a chance to really be heard as to what it is we're saying. And that is why I am supporting this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Trustee Hastings. Okay, and we have Trustee King also on the list. Please go ahead, Trustee King.
Thank you. Good afternoon through you, Chair. I'm just seeking clarification on this item. I'm looking for just a better understanding of exactly which item in conversation we'd be suspending the bylaws on. I'm a little bit confused by Trustees Pay's reference to staff's recommendation. I believe there was a staff report, and I believe the item that we're looking at is a recommendation from trustees. So if you don't mind clarifying that for us, please, before we continue, or for me, that would be appreciated.
Sure. So my understanding, and I did check this with governance staff, is that we are voting, or we are going to be looking at report number 7. That's what this item is, report number 7 from Tuesday, April 2nd. And it is on page 53 of our agenda. It has a recommendation in it that was moved by trustees Lee and Arts. And that is what we would be looking at. If you just give me one moment, I'm just going to pull up.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm talking the report, not the staff recommendations for the budget.
Trustee Pay, I'm just going to, I'm speaking at the moment, so I just want to be clear what we have before us tonight. Based on its mandate as laid out in section 4.7.3 of the board's bylaws, FBEC has considered a report from staff regarding the 2024-2025 budget and has made recommendations to the board for consideration. On April 2nd, 2024, FBEC considered a report from staff entitled Options to Balance the 2024-25 Budget that included a recommendation that the board approve the options to balance as presented in the report. After staff presented the report, the committee chair opened the floor for discussion of the report. Staff's recommendation was not moved, and it was not seconded during the discussion. Instead, a motion in substitution was moved by trustees Lee and trustees Arts regarding the 2024-2025 budget, and debate ensued, followed by a vote on that motion. As with any other matter for consideration on an agenda, after it is voted on, the matter is completed and discussion on the next item takes place. So tonight, what is before us is FBEC's report with a recommendation regarding the budget. Trustees are able to ask questions on that report. Note also that the report includes a minority report from a member of the committee. In accordance with the bylaws, a minority report can only be moved and considered should the board not adopt the committee's recommendations. I would just say that the recommendation that was put forward has multiple parts that cover many different aspects of the staff report. So I do believe there are a number of areas that can allow for questions within the recommendation that the budget committee put forward. Does that provide clarity, or are there still questions?
Through
Trustee
you,
King,
Chair,
I believe you had the floor.
Through you, Chair, thank you. That provides the clarity I was seeking. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you.
But Chair, I want to discuss.
Trustee Pay, you don't have the, so I'm just going to ask for clarification from governance staff because we haven't actually voted on being able to speak more than once yet. So
Okay.
I want to make sure I'm following our bylaws. I believe there's still a speaker. Trustee Patel looked like he had his hand up. So Trustee, I'm just going to, though, before we go to you, Trustee Patel, give me just 1 second. Am I correct in interpreting we have not suspended the bylaws? So Trustee Pay would, correct, okay. So I'm going to go to Trustee Patel, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm looking for the same clarification as Trustee King asked. Since there was a substitute motion, we cannot discuss or debate on the staff report, which was put forward before the substitute motion. Am I hearing correctly?
I'm just going to ask our governance lead, Ms. Joseph Dowers, could you please clarify, are trustees allowed to ask questions on the original report, or is it on the motion of substitution that is before us?
Madam Chair, trustees can ask questions on what is before you, the recommendation from FBEC, which, as you indicated, has different sections that was raised in the staff report.
Okay. Including that first section, like there's many sections that allow questions. So it's really only if there is something that isn't at all referred to that you can't ask questions for, is the way I interpret it, if that makes sense.
So does it mean that we cannot discuss on the staff report? Unless it's recommended, but most of the items are recommended, right? But there are still some questions of clarification on staff report. Can we discuss that? Yes or no? Because I think that's the confusion we had on FPAC too. So just want to make sure, can we discuss on the staff report? Or does a substitute motion makes the original staff report null and void?
Ms. Joseph Dowers, I would look to you for clarification on this.
Madam Chair, it's not a matter of making it null and void. The usual procedure is that standing committee would bring a recommendation to the board, and that is what is discussed at board.
All right, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so seeing no other questions, I don't, oh, Trustee King, you do, no, Trustee King has done, right? He can close. Can't he close? That's Trustee Pay. Trustee Pay, if you wish to close, you may do that.
Madam Chair, before I close, I'm still confused. Like, to be honest, I really wanted to have a discussion regarding the staff reports. My intention is that I have a question for the report. During the FI meeting, I didn't finish my questions. And then Trustee Lee moved his motion. And then somehow, I don't know how the procedure went. It just like, the question regarding the report all of a sudden become substituted by the motion. So my question was interrupted. When I tried to ask the chair to put me back for the speaker list, I was not allowed to speak after the amended motion been voted. So I really wanted to discuss the report, ask a question about the staff report, because which is so comprehensive, so complex, without asking critical questions, without fully understanding what's in the report. I don't really think we as trustee can make the right decision. So I wish my colleagues would agree with me. We can put this report on the floor. So we can go through again with all the details, with all the questions being asked and answered before we really vote for our budget. Thank you very much.
So, Trustee Pei, I think we've explained the challenge. I understand your frustration, but the bylaws are the bylaws. So I think at this point, as we've indicated, this motion is very wide-ranging. It allows for many questions, I think, depending on how they're framed. So you've put forward a good motion. You've made a case for it. I think it's up to the board to see if 2/3 agree with you about suspending the bylaws, and I would suggest we move on with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So we will now, I don't see any other speakers on the list. So we will now open the vote on this item. And it is in e-scribe, I believe.
Trustee Lee is in favor.
Trustee Pei in favor.
Trustee Hassan in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Hastings? Yes.
Trustee Goes in favor.
Trustee Rajagula-Singham, how do you vote? And that has carried. Okay, so we will have, people will be able to speak more than once on this item. So I think as we're now on item number 3.34, I did get just before we, no, well, I'll just leave that for now. Okay. Am I introducing this to staff or just going straight to the movers? Go straight to the movers, right? Okay, so I'm going to go straight to the movers of this motion to introduce this item. So that would be Trustee Lee and Trustee Arts. Trustee Lee, do you wish to introduce this item?
Thank you. Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I really, first of all, I once again really appreciate everyone in the committee and especially everyone on the staff team for putting together the outlook and overview of our 2024-2025 budget. And that I personally think it was a very clear picture of the financial situation of our board, and it outlined very clearly the difficult decisions that we had to make or we have to make sure that our board is operating in alignment to the requirement that's set out by the Education Act while making decisions that are in the best interest of students. The overall purpose of this motion is to put together and bring forth options or suggestions made collectively by all the trustees that are on the FBEC committee, along with some trustees who are not on the committee but have also contributed to the decision-making process. So this is really not a motion that's drafted solely by myself or Trustee Arts. I believe you agree to that. It is something that was drafted collectively by a team, and the purpose is to make sure that one, as much as we can, be financially responsible and reduce expenditures where we can, but in the same time, not making any rash decisions that will impact programming, impact our students, impact our community, and also impact our staff members without a comprehensive study at the appropriate committee and with the appropriate process to make sure that the decisions that we made are not only solely driven by financial need, but are also taken with a view of student impact and what is best for our kids. So there are a lot of components to this motion. It has been outlined very clearly during the committee process, so I won't go through them again. I'm sure I'm happy to answer any questions that any of my colleagues will have. But throughout the entire process, I think everyone has worked very hard. I believe this is a good plan and a good direction forward, and I hope the board will support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Lee. Trustee Art, as the seconder, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Chair. As Trustee Lee said, we put this together because there were a very large number of motions going back and forth. There was a lot of concern around the deficit and the options to balance. But there was also areas of support for what staff wanted to get done. So in overall conversations with different trustees, what I heard was that there was support amongst trustees for helping staff to find efficiencies in operating. That's, I think we all understand that that's the role of staff, that for a lot of, and for myself, I fully expect that every year staff will be looking at how we do things better, how we find efficiencies in our system. And I think there were really good suggestions, and I think most of the trustees I've talked to acknowledge that there were really good suggestions about how to find those efficiencies and do things better. But there were also pieces that caused concern, and most of these were around impacts to programming. So there were a number of different motions going back and forth, or suggestions and questions, and we tried to capture as much as possible. So I will say some of the motions were not well aligned with each other or were conflicting, and we tried to get to a point of consensus that we heard about what could be supported readily and what needed more discussion. And so we do very much appreciate the work that staff have put in so far, and we want to be here to support that work to do things better, even where there's delays, even where this motion recommends delaying implementation. It's not a stop. Nobody wants to stop the work from going forward. I think what's looked at is the concern on the impact to programming outside the school day, and especially to community, and what's the best way forward to support that work. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things here, and we hope that this is a good step forward in getting through the budget in maybe a little bit different way than we've done previous years, but a step forward in getting us to June. Thank you.
Okay, and now we will move to the more general speaking list. Trustee Laskin, followed by Trustee Patel.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the work that went into the collaboration in having this motion pass FBEC. And I appreciate there are different sections, and we might not all agree with each of the sections, but I think the plan to do our budget in a phased approach prior to the GSNs being announced is smart. And I think it's smart for a number of ways. We only hire one staff member in the TDSB, and that's the director. And we hold the director accountable. And when staff bring us a report with options in it, I don't really like the word operational efficiencies, because I think the director is actually bringing these to our attention in Part A because she's thinking of the students and staff in the schools, and she wants to streamline the delivery and actually improve the delivery of how we support. It's deliberate. The multi-year strategic plan has been deliberate, and there'll be a reorganization after the multi-year strategic plan, which will also be deliberate, to improve performance while actually supporting student achievement and staff well-being. So I actually see it, I'm actually wondering why some of these are before us, because I actually see this, as has been mentioned by my colleagues who previously spoke, that in running of an organization, if you're not always looking how to modernize, improve communication, improve relationships in support of your product, if we were an organization, but I'm thinking of our students and our staff and our system, that wouldn't be the director doing her job. So I'm very grateful for the fact that we're looking at how we actually do the work to support our schools. Secondly, I want to thank the board for adding back the VPs and the school-based safety staff. We actually increased the original starting deficit, but we actually made, I believe, our schools functionable. And if we approve Section A of this report, then we're actually down to a deficit in this budget of 10.6 million. If we approve some of what's in Section B, there's a possibility of another million. We're down to 9.6 million. And that's without the GSNs. And I remain hopeful that the ministry understands they can't implement some of the curriculum changes without providing staff to boards to actually implement those changes. So I'm talking about technology supports. I'm talking about literacy coaches, math coaches, and staff in our schools to support the safe running of our schools, because schools are microcosms of community, and we need staff in those schools to keep our kids and our staff safe, especially when we support inclusion in our classrooms. We need the resources that support that inclusion within our classrooms. So I remain hopeful. We're going a little bit. There'll still be a deficit, potentially, after if the board chooses to support the recommendations before it. And then staff will bring back some reports before June 30th, which is our deadline. And other reports need to wait, because I've made this point on multiple occasions. I don't believe in significant change through a budget process. I believe if we're going to have significant change, it goes to a committee. It involves deputations. It involves collaboration with our partners or our groups, because some of the changes that are so significant and the impacts, we have to understand the ramifications of those changes. And that's why I feel very strongly and will support most of Section B, which talks about not stopping general interest and seniors daytime programs now, because just can't do that, or increasing permits by 30%. We just can't do that. These groups and these partners are vital. And I am really looking forward to harnessing the power of seniors in our advocacy, because I remember when boards were funded by a tax base, the room would be filled with seniors because people cared with their pocketbook. So my time is up now, but I may come back on the speakers list, but I hope the board can support this motion. Thank you.
Trustee Patel, your turn.
Chair, I don't have much to say. Question through you to staff. Do we have progress on this motion? Any of one of the item, two of the items? Or is it too much ask?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, yes, staff certainly have been studying this motion. We are waiting until the board passes the motion and it becomes a resolution to fully execute the directions listed here.
Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Trustee Pei, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Before I start, I just want to understand the procedure better. Am I only allowed to speak about an item on the motion, or I can ask a question to the staff about the report?
You can ask questions to staff as they pertain to the motion.
Okay, perfect. Oh, great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, I see the motion. There's item 3. There's talking about supporting staff with self-wellness. So when I look at staff report, it's what interpreted by the sick leaves, basically decrease sick leaves by $7 million. So I just want to understand how does the staff arrive this number, $7 million.
Thank you, and through the chair. We were asked to identify ways to set a reasonable goal to bring down the cost of sick leave. In working with the folks in people and culture to analyze the information we received from a review of our disability management department and some of the ways in which we've been working on supporting attendance in schools and well-being, we believe that $7 million would be a reasonable goal for TDSB to achieve. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, how can I ask the staff how they derive this number? I'm asking how they derive the number. How does they come this number $7 million? On what basis? On what data really support that? Or they just think, okay, $7 million, that's not a good number, so we just try to use that. How you derive this number? How this number come up? $7 million is big number. It's got some reason behind this. It's got to be some quantitative analysis or data to show that this $7 million is correct, or at least is our best estimate.
Through the chair, as we stated in an earlier meeting in private, we had an external third party review our disability management, and through that process, a review of our sick leave usage at TDSB. Through that process, they provided a number. For example, the cost of salary continuance per day is approximately $10 million. That does not include replacement costs. So what we decided to do is to aim reasonably to try to achieve across the board something less than 1 day. And this would help in terms of savings, the continuation costs. Is what really is important is the replacement cost, and that's where you'll find some savings. In another report, we also talked about the cost of a replacement. So I believe in the last meeting that we had, we determined it would be about $5 million. So what we want to do is achieve a little bit more than $5 million. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, through your chair. So $5 million is almost our cost for replacement cost for sick leaves. But so I understand why staff asks a report, which is saying our replacement cost is $600,000 per day, per school day. Why the discrepancy between $5 million and $600,000? Why is the staff present this way? Because when reading the report here, which is on on the agenda page 68, if you read it, since this change, the School Board's Cooperative Inc. said that provincial average use of sick days has doubled from 8 to 16 days. Does this number has any use for us? Why we just talking about provincial average? What's our sick leave days, by the way? What's our increase of sick leave days? What's the actual number of sick leave days of our school board? How that compares to provincial average? And why the report saying, okay, each school day costs the board approximately $600,000 in replacement cost? Now I'm hearing for each sick leave days costs our $5 million. I mean, this number just doesn't add up. I'm so confused.
So thank you. And through the chair, I think we explained this at the last meeting. The $600,000 represents the total cost of our sick leave divided by the number of school days in the year. So that's 188 working days, and therefore that the cost of sick leave is $600,000 a day. As the trustee indicated in that meeting, if you take our average sick days, which we indicated also in that meeting, that was an average of 20 for our school board. The trustee correctly indicated that our cost per sick leave day is $5.6 million per day. So if this $7 million, again, this is people and culture doing their best thinking. Obviously, we would like to, at least get to the provincial average, but we can't do it overnight. So we had to look at what are the things that we can do, what are the things that we can put in place that would help us to reduce that number and over time make the improvements that get us to average. And it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to say that we're 4 days over the provincial average, and so we're going to reduce by 4 days next year and save over $20 million, because that will not be possible. So people in culture use their best thinking to determine how much would be reasonable for us to include as a savings for next year, and that amount is $7 million, which is about a day and a half improvement in our average.
Okay, thank you, Associate Director Zucker. Through Madam Chair, may I ask the staff that in the future report, can staff really provide the number really reflect the facts? Because reading this report here, I thought our replacement cost for sick leave days like $600,000. Reading this report here, I thought our sick leave is 16 days. So basically,
through the chair, we can provide both of those numbers in future reports.
Yes, I think that would help us. Thank you, through Madam Chair. I think that in the future would help us understand how costly is this sick days to our board. I did a rough calculation based on previous report. Sick leave days cost us $112 million. $112 million. Our deficit is $27.9 million. So almost 4 times. So if we can make effort, even bring the sick leave days to the provincial average, which is 16 days, we would save $5.6 million times by 4. That's $22.4 million. That's how significant the saving we can have. I know people say, okay, why you always drag on the sick leave days? Because that's the saving we can have. That's the way we should. The only thing I think we should really try to bring our effort to below the provincial average or close to average is sick leave days. The 4 days may sound as not a big number, but that's 25% higher than the provincial average. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have another question related to the school renewal.
So Trustee Pay,
yeah?
you've hit your 5 minutes, so I'm going to put you at the end of the list, and we'll let other people get a chance to speak, okay?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Trustee Dawson, you're next.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just want to start by thanking my colleagues for all of the thought and detail that went into this this recommendation. I wondered if staff could refresh my memory on what school renewal covers, please, through the chair.
Thank you, and through the chair. So currently, some of our school renewal costs that are not capitalizable, so meaning they're less than $10,000, have been over the amount that is allowable under the school renewal grant. And therefore, we have been including approximately $6 million in operations. Some of that will not be able to be possible to reduce completely. But some of it we expect that we will be able to monitor. In addition, when we have unfilled jobs in our maintenance line, in some cases, we are having to go out to third-party contractors to do the work. And when we do that, there's obviously, we're paying the employees that are off, we're paying the third-party contractor, and then we have to pay the union a percentage based on the fact that that's part of the collective agreement when we have to use third parties. So by looking again at absenteeism and trying to make improvements there, we expect to also be able to impact this number.
Okay, thank you. So then it would be correct to say that for Part A, items 2 and 3 do not impact staffing in terms of cutting positions. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, could you please identify for us the parts under B that would require us to delay the implementation entirely due to reports coming back in the fall as opposed to prior to the budget decision? Through the chair.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, this is a question that staff have asked at the previous meeting, and so I would respectfully refer back to the movers to identify the timelines that are part of the expectation that trustees will be voting on this evening.
Trustees Lee and Arts, I'd look to you guys to provide some clarity for the director.
Madam Chair, apologies. Can I just ask for the question to be clarified again? I caught a part of it, but not all of it.
Sure. Through the chair, I just asked which of the parts under B would, how did I phrase it? Which of the parts under B would not be possible for us to, I guess, implement this year because the reports coming back to committee would be in the fall as opposed to prior to June. So for instance, the reports coming back to PSSC, PPC, like which one of those would mean that we couldn't vote on it this year at all?
Thank you, Trustee Dawson, for the question. In my opinion, and this is from the research, well, not research, but the considerations that were made when I drafted this part of the proposed motion, of course, in consultation with the entire FPAC committee. My understanding and expectation is that Part B.2 and also Part B.3, the reports that are being requested in these two sections to be reviewed at the PSSC are not expected to be completed before the start of the next fiscal year, which is after September 2024, which means if that report were to come back in the next fiscal school year, any changes would only be in place for the budget cycle thereafter, which is the 2025-2026 budget cycle. There is a, so does that answer the question?
Yes, that does. Thank you. I do have a request. I wonder if we could vote separately under A for all, so vote all three parts separately, just like we're doing for B, and also for C, D, and E to be voted separate from A and B, but not necessarily the bullets under C, D, and E.
Okay, so just to clarify, I had said this to Trustee Dawson, but I haven't said this to the whole committee. Trustee Arts had asked, she had sent an email requesting that Part B be done ad seriatim. So just so everybody understands what Trustee Dawson is referring to. So the request then from you, Trustee Dawson, is to have to have Part A voted ad seriatim, as in Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, then Part B, again, ad seriatim, each item, each bullet point, essentially. And then there has been no request to do C and D ad seriatim.
Correct.
C, D, and E.
Correct.
All right. So at the moment, that's where we're at. If that changes, we'll keep everybody posted. You still have the floor, Trustee Dawson.
Thank you. Those were actually my questions, but I just did want to comment on this. The reason that I've asked for ad seriatim under A is that Part 1 does include not necessarily, people losing their jobs. They will either be reduced through attrition or through moving, into other roles. But the positions themselves are being cut. And, these are roles that support school improvement planning. I really do think that they are critical. We have a new multi-year strategic plan that we've recently voted on, and part of that, within that, are ministry requirements that then will filter down to schools. So I do think that it is important to acknowledge that Part 1 as an actual cut rather than a reduction in spending like 2 and 3. Part A, 2, and 3. And I also, again, just want to reiterate some of the points I made in FBEC, that I do think that it is worthwhile to wait for the reports, specifically around the General Interest Seniors Daytime Program, Learn for Life, and also the International Languages and African Heritage Programs. Moving the time from 5:30 to 8, as we've heard from many of our constituents, will have a great impact likely on enrollment, as most of the students are from K to 3, making 8 o'clock overlapping with bedtime. And I really do think that we need to work together with the city and other levels of government to see if we can maintain seniors programming, as well as promote the programs in the way that cater to seniors. So I really do appreciate this motion. I like the way that we're voting on it now, and I look forward to hearing all of my colleagues' comments that will shape my vote as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Through
you.
the chair.
Thank you very much. Trustee McLean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just interested in voting at seriatim, and you've got a much more complicated plan in place than I had in mind, so I'm good. Thank you.
We are working through this speaker list. Trustee King, you're next.
Thank you to the chair. I'm also just reiterating a little bit of what I've shared in previous meetings. I want to thank the movers again for just consolidating all of this. I think this is a really strong recommendation. I think it responds to my earliest remarks about wishing we were having a conversation that was more solution oriented. And I really think that we've arrived there again by looking at all the different areas that I think it's responsible for us to look at internally, looking at the partnerships as well, looking at the advocacy. So again, just very supportive. I'm not going to reiterate the details in each of the points. I think it's all been captured very well here, both the thinking from trustees and the reflection of the insights that we heard during the delegations. I do have just one question for the movers, and I'm asking because I just want to be explicitly clear for the benefit of some community and some public that might be following this process and might see something a little bit different than they had before, just in terms of the recommendation that is before us. So I'm just looking for clarity that any item that is not identified here in this recommendation is at this point not up for change, that there is no direction being provided to staff about changes of anything that public may have seen in a previous report. I just want to be explicitly clear about that for the public because I do think that there might be some concern about some items that they might have seen previously. And I'm just wondering where that might stand now or at a future point. So hopefully that question is clear for the movers and you can just vocalize that answer, please.
Just give staff a moment and they will respond.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I believe the trustee asked the movers to clarify their position on the items not included in this motion.
Through the chair, just to clarify, my question was for the movers, and I'm simply looking for just clarity that we are only impacting items that are on this recommendation and that anything previously seen or discussed is not being directed for change.
So I'm happy to ask the movers to do that. Trustee Lee, the question that's being asked is just confirmation that we're just voting on what you see before us, not on items that might have been in the report but that aren't on here. Am I summarizing correctly, Trustee King?
I'll just refine that slightly to say that there is no direction for change being provided to any item that is not before us in this recommendation.
Trustee Lee?
Madam Chair, I had to once again step away for a sec. What was the question?
I can't hear you, Trustee Lee. Would you be able to speak a little bit louder?
Madam Chair, what was the question for me?
Trustee King, would you mind repeating your question for Trustee Lee?
Through the chair to Trustee Lee, I'm just looking for the benefit of the public and some of my constituents that might have this question. I'm just looking for clarity and confirmation that we are only looking at items that are on this recommendation at the moment, and that any item that the public may have seen in a previous report, either as a proposed option to balance or another area of overspending, that there is no direction for change being provided to those items at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Trustee King. And Trustee Arts, I look for you for your input as well. And also to you, Madam Chair. My understanding of this is that this is a motion as a replacement option to the report that was put forth by staff members. And therefore, if passed tonight, these are going to be the resolution that staff will implement within the budget process. And any additional changes, although still can be made, are going to be incremental to this. And I also look for staff to confirm my understanding.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, no direction has been provided on the elements of the options to balance that are not referenced within this motion. However, it is staff's belief that in not making a decision about those other items, that they remain considerations until the board's final decisions with respect to the operating budget for 24-25.
Thank you. Through the chair, I believe I've heard the clarity that I'm seeking. And those are not options at the moment, but that doesn't preclude possibilities in the future through the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to, before we move to the second round of people wanting to speak again, I just want to check to see if there's anybody who hasn't spoken who wishes to speak. Trustee Earhart will put you on the list. Is there anybody else that wishes to be added to that list? Trustee DeVitis, okay. Thank you. So Trustee Earhart, please go ahead.
First, just I'm wondering if staff could clarify, and perhaps once again, for A1 and 2, central staff and school renewal, if they could please describe a little bit more of what the details of those elements, just to remind trustees, and thank you very much.
Thank you, and through the chair, the central staffing includes senior team, central departments, as well as central teaching staffing. And then for section part 2, school renewal, there are no impacts on staffing.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say very quickly, thanks very much to everyone in community who came and gave presentations, and also those who didn't come to give presentations, but who sent countless emails, who stopped us on the street, who texted, just to express views. I'm very, very, very grateful to have seen so many people come together in support of schools and this important and essential services that we provide to a very broad and diverse community. I've said in previous meetings that I am concerned with the proposals around central staff reductions, and I do want to make it known just how valued the operations of central staff are, in addition to our school-based operations. And I'm very grateful to trustees for the unanimous vote to reinstate vice principals and offer that stability to our schools at this time. Thank you. I also just want to say that I sincerely appreciate the efforts in this motion. I will say that for me personally, some of the reports coming back, I'm happy that the word is delay, but for me, for some of these programs, I don't want to see them under consideration at all for removal. And so I want to very clearly articulate that I'm not supportive of ending Learn for Life. I don't support it being a delay because I don't believe we should be considering it. That being said, I think it would be positive to have a report to better understand. Certainly hearing from community, there's a desire to engage and to work together to save these crucial community programs. I did have one more question, and I'd asked this in committee, and I just wanted to try to get it crystal clear, is for international language programs, and this is very important for my community, and I may have a false understanding here. And so it's my understanding that currently in many schools that are operating immediate after school programs, there is a need for 2 international language courses with a certain number of registrants in order to be able to operate in that school. What I am seeking clarification on is for item 3.34B2, while continuing to implement the recommended 25 student pre-register minimum, what we're giving direction for the minimum number of classes for a site. of 25 in order for an international language program to run at that school. And this is something that is of great concern to my community for clarification on this point as to whether sites that are currently operating 2 international language classes after school will have the ability to continue to operate, or if they will need to recruit roughly 25 students more in a separate class on that site. And I hope that's clear, and I would appreciate clarification, and thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair. Currently, we have sites that do have as few as 2 language classes. And this is part of the challenge, as we have explained, because it's not creating efficiencies. The motion BII indicates that we would be continuing to implement the recommended 25 student pre-register minimum. So moving forward, we would be opening classes with 25 students with the hope of those 25 students maintaining their attendance. I hope that clarifies. But there would be more than 1 class of 25 ideally.
Thank you. So there would be more than 1, but would there need to be 3, or would 2 still be acceptable based on the interpretation of this motion? And thank you.
Thank you for the question of clarification. In order for us to reach the efficiencies of having the hubs, we really would need to have 4 classes minimally at those hub locations. As I've previously shared, we currently have 135 spread throughout the city. The motion II delays the implementation of course time migration. So the potential that a class does not reach 25, we would need to follow our process of potentially canceling that class. But we would hope that parents would be able to move to another site, which may be problematic because it may not be after school. So this is a bit of a challenge, Trustee Ahar. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you. Currently, and historically, there has been the practice of staff going and monitoring the enrollment in the programs across the city. And Con Ed staff were going and they would monitor how many students are in the classes throughout the year. And if there are less than the optimal size, there is a process built into the collective agreement that measures that, so that we might have to close classes. So that closing classes is not a new phenomenon because of the budgetary restraints that we have. It is part of the ongoing yearly practice of reviewing how many students are in the class and how many classes are per site. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So my understanding, however, is that there is something new in terms of there's several aspects that are proposed that are new, although there has always been a challenge in terms of the number of sites per, the number of classes per location and the number of students per class. My understanding is that there's the area of there's time, there's minimum enrollment per class, and then there's minimum number of classes to form a hub. Because this is silent on minimum number of classes to form a hub, what I'm understanding is that there is a risk to community who may believe that the course time migration delay may save their program, when in actual fact, a movement to a hub, even at the same time, could end their program. And so on that basis, I may consider moving an amendment to this to strike the last part while continuing to implement the recommended 25 student pre-register minimum, simply to make sure that the engagement on this can effectively consider all of the elements and how they come together to impact the programs. I may not be supported, but I do feel it's I feel it should be very clear in the public engagement if their after-school program will not be viable in its current construction because of a movement to hubs, so that everyone is aware of the changes that will be taking place. And thank you.
So we can put you back on the list if you wish. So we are now, we're still on the first time speakers list. We have Trustee DeVitis followed by Vice Chair Shen at the moment. So please go ahead, Trustee Oh, and before that, if you wouldn't mind, Trustee DeVitis, staff I think would wish to respond to Trustee Earhart.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, respectfully, those are decisions that are currently being made by staff on an ongoing basis. So just to inform the trustees' debate with respect to this, this is a routine analysis that continuing education staff would normally undertake and make decisions about whether classes would run or not. It is not adding any additional purview to staff to close classes that we do not have now and exercise on a regular basis where appropriate. So what was described by the trustee is normal business. It is not new business or a new responsibility that staff would have as a result of what is written in this motion.
So just for clarification to the director, does the clause that the trustee is concerned about, does that change the situation? Like, is it problematic to keep it in there, or does it just really mean business as usual for you guys?
Through the chair, it is business as usual.
Okay. It is, I do believe, operational, I would just add. It feels operational, given that explanation. So,
thank you. I did not want it to seem that the circumstance described by the trustee would be a new decision for staff as a result of what's written. It is, in fact, the analysis that occurs on an annual basis.
okay, thank you for that clarification from staff. I hope that helps, Trustee Earhart. But we can come back to you on the list, and we'll go to Trustee DeVitis.
Thank you. Wanted to start by thanking staff for all the effort that they put in to get the original report to help us through all the deputations, to help us through all the consultations, hundreds of hours individually for many of you. So I just wanted to take a second to thank you. I also wanted to thank my colleagues, the chair of the FBEC committee, Trustee Patel, but then also Trustee Arts and a number of others that worked on trying to combine a number of different motions into one that are making today a lot more palatable, digestible for all of us. So we don't have, a dozen different competing motions, and that took a lot of work off camera. So I want to thank folks for the work that they did on that. In relation to a budget, we have a structural deficit. I know that the Ministry of Education will try and point out a number of places where we need to be more efficient, and I'm happy to see item A3, that we're going to be making some improvements in how we deal with the absenteeism problem that is real. I share this story because I think it's illustrative, and then I have some questions. When I was doing the town hall on the budget with Trustee Hassan, the person that was helping to move the chairs was complaining about a number of folks that didn't show up to work that day, and it happens often. So it's a real problem. People see it. But it's also rooted in deep, real things. So we can't just wish it away and say that we could be more efficient simply by choosing a new number. There has to be a plan, and there is a plan in place. And we're changing our entire corporate structure to allow for that plan to take place. So I have some questions about some of that, because I want to add some facts to that conversation. and not let us get lost on some of the speaking points that I'm hearing from the Ministry of Education about how we need to be better, but instead focus on the things that we want to save and be positive about the things that we want to improve in our school board. So to staff, through the chair, does the TDSB have benchmarks that are equitable with the fact that the City of Toronto is the more expensive place to operate?
Through the chair, with regards to the benchmarks that are included in the GSN, whether it is salary related or whether it is related to benchmarks for operating costs, we are continually finding our costs to be higher than the benchmarks.
Thank you. So we more or less receive, according to the province's own numbers and the financial office report that came out in December, average monies per student, even though the City of Toronto is the more expensive place to operate, to build, our salaries are higher, and we have a number of other issues. So we have a real structural deficit that is based on real issues. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, I don't know the costs in other jurisdictions. I know that our costs are higher than benchmarks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Through the chair, is it true that we have higher incidences of higher demands on special education and higher needs as a result of that compared to other school boards? Do we have more operational needs on average than other school boards in other jurisdictions? Are we able to answer that?
Thank you, and through the chair, that would be very difficult to determine. What I can certainly say is our students have high levels of need and that we overspend our special education envelope by a significant amount. So I would argue that certainly more funding for our students with special education needs would help reduce that overture. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, is it true that because, in fact, according to a number of provincial reports, the TDSB has higher special needs, if I can simplify it to a conclusion for lack of time, that in effect also has an impact on the absenteeism rate. We had a report in the fall that spoke about some of those needs and how we're trying to deal with some of those issues. But that in fact, the fact that we don't have enough supports in the classroom leads down the pipeline to further issues in terms of how we're able to deal with that. In fact, the lack of investment in some of these needs is part of the reason that many of our parents have concerns about how we're able to deal with things in a sort of forward-looking manner.
Thank you, and through the chair, I can confirm anecdotally through discussions with our educators that indeed they cite the unfilled absences for positions within our congregated ISP classes or within the school generally, or the demands of teaching do contribute to their absences due to unwellness, whether that be mental or physical, and contributes to our attendance rate. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. To focus on one item of the budget and to think that that item is going to somehow solve the structural budget is I think, a fallacy, and that's my opinion. But it's based on the reports that I've seen and the work that I've seen staff do. There are a number of issues that lead into that one element, and we're not going to be able to solve that simply by looking at spreadsheets and coming up with numbers. out of the sky. There needs to be a process in place for us to be able to resolve the issue and how our children are being affected by the lack of investment, amongst many things, in special education. Thank you for that.
I think staff still has more to respond to you.
No, I just wanted to clarify, especially with regards to differentials. As indicated in the presentations that we've done, the TDSB teacher salaries in particular are higher than the central grid, and that does contribute for the current year that we're in, about a $22.3 million differential.
Okay, next up we have Vice Chair Shan. Please go ahead.
Before I make some comments and before I ask some questions, I just wanted to also thank the staff for coming up with these options, looking into all the different ways in which we can try to balance the books. I also want to thank the community members who came, but also the community members who have been surviving through this, and that includes educators as well as families and students. That this chronic underfunding of our education system has put them through on a day-to-day basis, the struggles that they face, and you know, just because they're not here making delegations, we see them and we hear their struggles on an everyday basis. It's unfortunate that we are here talking about a small part of a budget in context. We are spending majority of our time as a board trying to figure out where that 1% of the budget, 2% of the budget is moving, where we should be looking at investing. There's a lot of talk about investing into infrastructure, building highways and building other things and so on. Where is the conversation around building our future, our children? And it's been frustrating as a trustee and as a father to go through this process, and I can only imagine how frustrating it will be for our parents and caregivers and families. So I think the biggest issue for me is around how do we push back on this? How do we make sure that we are able to put forward a vision through our budget that communicates what we really need? Because this exercise, just like the previous many years of exercise, ends up being a happy note from where we started, because we always are able to find some ways in which some of the cuts are reversed, some of the things are saved, and some people are feeling at the end of the day, we were much worse off when we started in February, and now we are a bit better off. And that sense of relief in the context is problematic. Because that sense of relief that every year that we go through is what is costing us. So I support this motion for the purpose that it is delaying, it's pushing back a few things. But if you look at this motion, it doesn't talk about the crumbling infrastructure, social infrastructure we have to support our children with special needs. This motion doesn't invest more. This motion doesn't invest more into supporting newcomers and refugees who have come into our city, just like me, I did. But they are an investment because they have built this city. That's a generation. So I feel like our focus is a bit misguided, particularly not because of us, but because if the provincial government can actually look at our situation and say, this in context is probably like a 2% or whatever percentage that needs to be increased from a bigger budget point of view, we would be talking about how do we make sure that increase of investment can be aligned to our multi-year strategic plan. So with that, I have some questions. I'll start with the first question. It's around the device. I want to ask the staff through you, Madam Chair, are there other boards that are charging device fees, and what are some of the other practices that exist in a board that has similar socioeconomic status of a student population? Sorry if I can get the time.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, perhaps I could ask Executive Officer Snyder to begin, and then staff will add any additional information.
aware myself about that. I asked as executive officer Singh if he's aware of any school boards that are charging for devices.
Through the chair, Executive Officer Singh is not available this evening. But I would say that on a cursory scan, we haven't seen any, but we haven't done a detailed analysis.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The other question is around these reports that we were asking around Learn for Life, international languages and heritage programs, and so on. I want to, through you, Madam Chair, ask the staff if that report would be a report that also looks at growth and potential growth, potential sustainability options, as opposed to financial management of resources. Because you could go into a report for a program from two ways. Where are the savings, as opposed to where are the opportunities, and if there are possibilities that could be identified as well, since we might have some time before those reports come.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, staff is always eager to dream differently about offering program options for students and how to engage communities. Staff will have to balance our ability to dream about how to improve and expand programming with our responsibility to assist the board in balancing the budget, so that the Board of Trustees should expect a report that perhaps does a bit of both. I think we've shared some information through the several finance, business, and enrollment committee meetings where we have discussed these changes, and we will seek to expand on that while also being clear about some of the fiscal pressures that expansions would perhaps put on the board. And I'll note that today the Minister of Education in his press conference urged boards to look at programming that supports kindergarten to grade 12 students.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I know it's interesting that the curriculum changes are being pushed without the necessary support that is necessary to actually achieve some of those changes. My last question, I lost a few seconds because the clock was running before. My last question is to staff. The current situation we are in, what should have the GSN be if there was a percentage increase to what we got last year to GSN per student, or what would that percentage be in order for us to not have to deal with this deficit? I'll finish that. Thank you.
Through the chair, if you would give me a bit of a liberty, and then I will ask Associate Director Zucker to respond to your last question. You spoke about the curriculum changes. Just to give the board some perspective, when I was a central principal back in a long time ago, the funding for professional learning for teachers in math and literacy at that time was over $6 to $8 million. At that time, we also saw year-over-year improvements in student achievement. It has been a long time since we have seen that kind of investment, even if you take out the fact that we're in 2020, in professional learning for our staff, even though there have been several curriculum renewal opportunities. That is one of our aspirations, our dreams as educators, is to be able to invest in direct professional learning and direct supports for students in a number of areas captured in the new multi-year strategic plan, which we hope you will approve at an upcoming board meeting, as well as special education and many of the topics you've heard us discuss. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to talk about the dearth of funding that exists for professional learning for our staff. And now I'll ask Associate Director Zucker to answer your question.
Thank you, and through the chair. For exact percentages, I would have to do a little bit of digging, especially for last year. But what I'll note is that there have been limited increases to the GSN that have not related to provincially negotiated salary increases. So when we talk about a percentage increase to the GSN, it usually can sound like a higher number than it actually is, because those percentages are dedicated to the staffing increases that are negotiated through the collective agreements. In the past few years, we've seen a 2% increase in some of the benchmarks, like school operations, non-salaries, so things like utilities and maintenance expenses. That was about a 2% increase. And we've seen about a 2% increase, I think, in transportation in the benchmarks, with little change in the remaining benchmarks that are not salary related.
Thank you.
Well, on that depressing note, we've come to the end of our first round speaker list. So I think this is a good time to take a break, and we will come back in at 5 to 7. So we're just going to take a break so people can stretch and get up and move around. Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. session. Manshu, are we live? Okay, welcome back from recess, everybody. We are still on item number 5.34, and we are resuming. We're now on round 2 of the speakers list. Trustee Pay, over to you. Trustee Pay.
Oh.
It's your turn. Round 2. Go ahead.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I turn off my speaker. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to thank the mover and the seconder for moving this very important motion that address our deficit, which I think it addressed a lot of the concerns. But and before I can really wholeheartedly vote for this motion, I have a few questions to ask. To the staff regarding the purpose, implementation of a course time migration for the international language program. I understand is going to save, on the budget, but can anybody explain to me more about detail? What is cost for our to run the international language program? How many students are enrolled in those programs? How many language programs we're providing? How many schools were actually have those programs right now? And what's cost saving we're talking for this item here?
I'm just looking to staff for, are you able to answer that question?
Through the chair, I'm going to do my best. I think there were many questions that were just posed. International languages are in 135 sites throughout the city. And once again, we we open a class when there are 23 students. Trustee Pay, and can you just follow up with, help me know some of the other elements of what you posed?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Associate Director Sorisco. My second question is, what's the budget? What's the total budget? Because we're talking about, deficit, if I'm reading this correctly, is almost $2.9 million here. So what's the total budget? What really causes budget deficit? I just want to understand more about this. And, you're proposing $2.9 million. And I think there's two parts. One's international language, another one is African heritage part, right? So for this, I assume there's the two different programs. Can you just give me the figure for the two program? What's the total budget? What's the deficit for each one? And the proposed change time, how much money going to save for each program?
The revised estimates are?
Through the chair, according to the financial facts that we have in front of us, for international languages and African heritage, the revised estimates for the 2023-24 year was $6.877 million.
And the deficit, the financial summary for 23-24 was $2.9 million.
No, actually, I'm asking for two different items. One is the international language, is another African heritage. Is this two different, or just have one budget? They don't have a subcategory budget for each program?
Through the chair, International Languages Program is the program that is funded by the Ministry of Education, whereas African Heritage is a program that is unique to the Toronto District School Board. We offer African Heritage programs because we are TDSB, but it is not something for which we are funded by the ministry.
I understand. Through your chair, I just asked the number. I just want to understand the number. Could the staff provide the number?
Through the chair, they are combined because there is no funding for African Heritage. So International Languages funding provides the program for African Heritage. It's together. Thank you.
Okay, so, In your proposal, you want to move the time from 3:30 to 6 p.m. and to 5:30 to 8 p.m. How many schools you want to close down? I think this is saving based on most of you closing the schools, right? For the international program, so that way you can save money. Is that purpose?
Trustee
changing
Pay,
time.
that's not, just a reminder that your questions should be about the recommendation that's before us from the FBEC committee. The FBEC
understand.
committee made a different recommendation than what was in the staff report.
I understand the recommendation. I'm talking exactly about the recommendation because of changing time. I just want to say changing time, how much the changing time would save money for? How is it going to save money? Because that's going to help me to determine whether I want to vote for it or vote against.
Creating community hubs where classes are being offered from 5:30 until 8 o'clock enables more classes to be co-located within fewer sites. Therefore, the unfunded portion and costs that are attributed to the deficit reduce. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand this numbers. You, Chair, I just want to know how many schools you're proposed to close from those 135 schools for you to come this $2.9 million saving.
We'll ask staff if you can explain to the best of your ability. I don't know if you had that calculation really, because it was more a restructuring that you were talking about, but I'll allow that.
Thank you. Through the chair, and your interpretation is correct. What we have shared is that staff are committing to do the analysis and try and reduce the deficit as much as is possible. Because we concurrently want to be monitoring very carefully access to international language programs and to be maintaining that access for communities. Thank you.
So how that shifting time would allow us to save money for? Just because a shifting time means we can effectively close our schools. Because if you do the math, 2 million divided by 6.8 million, that means you pretty much want to close at least 40% more, if it's not more, 40%, the schools. Time by 135 schools, you're talking about almost 60 schools you're going to close. That's a big impact to the families and the students. Before make such dramatic change, have we ever have a consultation with the community? I just want to, I'm new trustee. I just want to understand the procedure here, because to my understanding, whenever we try to make change our policy, we try to have a community consultation. But how come we don't have any community consultation this time? Make such dramatic change, cutting 40% of the program. I just don't get it. I'm really baffled. Can anybody explain to me through your chair? Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. Trustee Pay, our hope in the vision of the community hubs is actually that we will make stronger programs and enable more students to access them, but create efficiencies so that we are reducing the deficit. By shifting the time, our hope is that actually more families are going to be able to get to the locations that will be selected. This model is a model that most other school boards in the GTA use to great effect. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we heard all the delegation. There are almost hundreds of delegates, came on March 26. We heard them unanimously. They reject the idea. So I just don't understand, through Madam Chair, why is such thing with this is going to provide convenience to the family to go serve in the program? Why they can just leave their kids at the same school and come back to pick them at 6 p.m. Instead, they pick them up at 3:30 and then drive around to another school site and they attend the program from 5:30 to 8 p.m. So I just don't understand the rationale why we make this dramatic change, cutting back 40% schools and making life so difficult for the family. In the Constitution,
Trustee
some young
Pei,
kids,
your
oh,
time has ended.
okay, can I come back to the list, please? I have more questions.
Okay.
Sorry, through the chair, can I just provide a little bit?
You can,
So
sure.
Trustee Pei was referring to a $2.9 million reduction. $2.9 million is actually the deficit in international languages right now. And the report, as the report suggests, the savings would be 1.1 million. So it's not the entire $2.9 million deficit. And there's a phase in. So for next year, we would only be looking at approximately half of that. So it would be more like a $600,000 savings.
Thank you. Please, Madam Chair, please put me back to the list. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's done. That's done. Next up, we have Trustee Patel.
Madam Chair, before I start, I would like to call up, I have my heartfelt gratitude for all the committee members on FPAC and their hard work, the movers and the seconder. And Vice Chair Diabetes, he forgot to acknowledge himself while he was acknowledging everyone else, how much hard work he has put into this. I'm fully supportive of this motion, but I have some questions of clarification on item B1. So when we got a report on February the 14th of AFPAC, we have number of devices purchased by schools are 78,800. During pandemic, we purchased 91,985 Chromebooks. That totals 170,785 devices. From grade 5 to grade 12, we require 143,000 devices. Since we are planning to introduce a user's fee, I would like to know from staff, where is this gap of additional devices? Do we have the devices? Are the devices with the staff? Or where are these devices? Because it's a huge number. And don't forget, I have calculated everything from grade 5 to grade 12. And we have not provided devices to grade 8 and grade 12 yet. So I would like to know, where are those extra devices? Do we really need to purchase extra devices? This is one of the questions which is bothering me a lot. So I'd like to have a clarification on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, this is a question that staff have been working to answer with principals of schools. What we know at this time is some of these devices have been allocated to staff as part of supporting digital learning in classrooms. It is replacing older devices that were once in use. Many trustees may have seen iPads in use in primary classrooms, as well as part of design and technology kits and science and technology learning. These may also be used to augment programs in our library learning commons. But we do acknowledge that the trustee's question is a relevant one, and we have thought about ways in which we can actually determine how these additional devices are being used, and if they are not being used or if they're being allocated to students, perhaps they could be redirected as part of one-on-one. Through the chair, we do not have a final solution to that at this time, and that is the reason that it was not included in our estimate of the total cost to one-on-one. We anticipate that in the future, when we do have an answer with respect to where these computers are being allocated, the age and functionality of these computers, that we may be able to in fact integrate it into our one-to-one device program.
Thank you, Madam Director. Through you, Madam Chair, can I expect from staff, when this report comes back, can I expect that report to be in there?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, we will do our best effort. As I said, this is an investigation, if you will, that we've been doing with principals of schools over the last year. So we do not have precise information to the degree that we are able to quantify these additional expenditures. We will include it in the upcoming report, but I can't be firm in the commitment that we will be able to trace the purchase of all of these devices for you.
Thank you, Madam Director. That's all from me, Madam Chair.
Okay, Trustee Earhart, you're next.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was back on the list. I will quickly ask about international languages one more time, and thank you. So I think what I was trying to ask before was around the consolidation, the hubs model, and that is not mentioned in the motion. And so what I was hoping to understand is if that is still going to be implemented. And I know in my community there's concerns around what the minimum number of students would be required for a location to operate. So for a school, for a hub to be able to exist. And I'm concerned that any engagement or program discussion publicly, particularly with those where English isn't necessarily their first language, that speaks to the time change, but doesn't speak to potentially a changing bar for how a location could be maintained, would lead to further confusion and could lead to like a negative outcome in terms of that engagement with community in particular. At least from my community, I'm hearing that it's not just the time. It is what's the bar? What do we have to, because there's great efforts to seek to recruit and to maintain programs that are highly valued by community, but the perception, what I'm understanding is that more students will need to be enrolled per location. And so my understanding is that right now, a minimum of 46 students are needed per location. That's 2 classes of 23 each. So say a Spanish class and a Cantonese class, for example. I'm not understanding what the new model will look like in terms of how many students per location would need to be enrolled for a location to be viable. And so if it's 25 per class, is that now 50 young people? So on Tuesday from 4:30 to 6, that we would have a Spanish class of 25, a Mandarin class, a Cantonese class of 25, or would it now be that 4 classes or 3 classes would need to operate of 25 at that location, which would be 75 or 100 students, which could make that out of reach for that community, but for smaller schools. It could also, and so that time, like it may no longer be viable for them to operate. So I'm trying to understand, and I am concerned if we go to engage on the time, if we're not talking about the consolidation and what that looks like and what that means. I hope that's helpful just to clarify, and I'm hoping to get some clarification. Consolidation was not, the hub model is not mentioned in this motion, but I'm hoping to hear from staff what the intention would be should the motion pass. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair, the concepts are a bit blended. And this is delaying the implementation of course time migration, which really is an essential element of the hub model. So this motion delays the migration of students to a later time. We will continue our regular operational practice, however, of analyzing class enrollment with our continued diligence in wanting to support the growth of access to international languages. Thank you. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. That's helpful, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Trustee Dawson. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, Trustee Earhart actually did ask partly my question. I just want to be crystal clear on what is the current number of mandatory classes in a school for the International Languages African Heritage Program to operate? Is it currently 2 classes, 3 classes? And then could it be increased despite this motion? Through the chair.
Thank you. And through the chair, we currently don't have a mandatory minimum. And that is part of what has created the inefficiencies leading to a deficit. I do not see anything in BII that sets a minimum. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to, thank you for the answer. I'm trying to understand, because there was some talk about some of II being operational, just in terms of the international languages program. So just to sum it up, Part BII, if it passes, would mean that nothing could currently change with the way that we currently conduct those programs. Is that correct?
Thank you. And through the chair, that is not a correct interpretation as I read II.
Okay. What will be the impact of II? I'm not sure I understand. Like, can we still, since it doesn't mention consolidation of classes, my interpretation of your answer to Trustee Earhart was that we still couldn't consolidate classes and create hubs if II passes. Is that correct?
Staff would continue, through the chair, staff would continue our operational process of analyzing enrollment to be maximizing it as much as possible. Where class enrollment is not viable, we would go through our decision-making process of closing classes. What II does is us not being intentional about selecting a nearby neighboring location to redirect and group like interested students to a later class. Thank you.
Okay. So then the hub model is not viable should BII pass. That's the root of my question, and I feel like I'm not getting that direct answer. Is it correct to say that the hub model is not viable should II pass? Through the chair.
Thank you. We are not going to be examining the data and intentionally creating hubs where we think that we can redirect students to. We are going to be analyzing the natural enrollment and following our typical process. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Trustee McLean, you're next.
Thank you, and through the chair. We heard from a number of delegations, and we received a number of emails about parents who indicated that the change in time from after school to 5:30 created what they perceived to be as a considerable hurdle. So given that feedback that we got, I'm interested in I guess why the hub activities had to start at 5:30, for example, and not, 4 o'clock or 4:15 or something that would have allowed families to do kind of what they're experiencing now. Maybe they'd have to move a little bit in their neighborhoods to get, because we would be centralizing a little bit, and there would be some transition associated with, potentially where geographically this would be held. But we're kind of, the hub model at least dramatically changes how this works for families. So I'd like to explore, if I can, why it had to be as late as it was, and it couldn't be earlier. That seems, at least on the surface, to work better for families.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll begin by saying that the start time at 5 o'clock going to 8 o'clock is a model that exists currently in TDSB. And in fact, if you remember the map in our first report, this is the model that is almost, it is the most consistent model in Scarborough. There are very few after-school ILE programs in Scarborough. So we know actually it is very effective. We also know that it is the model that neighboring GTA boards use as their only model, or have actually one location where ILE programs are offered. The thinking behind using that time for the hubs was a reflection of after-school programs are very limited to the students within that school. By moving to a later start time and choosing our locations very carefully for distance, we speculate that actually more families, because there'll be the dismissal from school, the opportunity to get home on the bus, have snack, would then be able to bring their children to the 5 o'clock start. Having said that, whether that time is better at 4:30 was not something that we reflected upon, because we saw the 5 o'clock start as being very successful. But thank you for the opportunity to be thinking and taking that back and thinking further on a start time. The other factor is what is the end time of our school locations, and some are quite late in the afternoon. So that was another reason why transportation home, having quick snack, 5 o'clock seemed like a consistently accessible time. Thank you.
Just a little follow-up, if I may, through the chair. And I certainly, concede that if it's not broken in certain parts of the city, we shouldn't try to fix it there. But in other parts of the city, they operate under a different model, and exploring or reaching out to communities and trying to figure out if a model in those areas that currently have earlier starting times might be have in those communities where that's been their experience and that's been their expectation, that there might be an opportunity to move in the hub direction and still account for an earlier time that those families have made work for them and conceivably might prefer. So.
Through the chair, thank you for that feedback. And I think it's a point of clarification about how much time would be required to create that hub and transportation availability. So thank you for the comment.
Okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee King, you're next.
Thank you. Are you hearing me better now?
Yes, that is better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you through the chair. I just have a quick question. As we're speaking about international language program, I just want to confirm that that's inclusive of African heritage and that those aren't two separate things being treated distinctly. And I'm just asking because we don't see African heritage in the language here in the recommendation. So again, I just wanted to be clear.
Through the chair, yes, the TDSB has consistently and inclusively had African heritage programs as part of the international languages structure.
Thank you. So through the chair, just anything that we're discussing here through the course of, about the migration, all of that would apply to the African heritage classes as well.
Through the chair, staff always assumed that was the case.
Okay. Through the chair, thank you. I just appreciated that confirmation.
Okay, before we move on to the third round, is there anyone else who hasn't spoken twice who wishes to, or who hasn't spoken for a first time who wishes to? Okay, not hearing any, then we will move on. Trustee Pay, you're up for number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do understand everybody tired, after 2 days lunch meeting. I don't want to take too much time. I'll be really short. I just want to ask the staff regarding the B3, whether we have proper consultation before we move into the recommendation to the board that we canceling all those general interest senior daytime program.
Thank you through the chair. There was no consultation prior to the creation of our recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, so your chair, I just want to understand our procedure for making certain cut of services or certain policy change. Is that our pretty normal procedure that we just make the recommendation or decision without a proper consultation to the committee?
Thank you through the chair. The budget development process is a public engagement process, and staff appropriately have engaged in that process, and public consultation is what we have been experiencing through delegations to the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, my understanding is delegation is not part of consultation. Am I correct?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, staff historically have not gone out prior to presenting the options to balance the budget and consulted independently of the board's decision-making process.
Okay, so Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Director. So moving forward, we heard the deputation from all the delegates. They unanimous against this idea. We received like hundreds of emails from the committee member. They against the idea, if it's not 1,000. And I just hope in our board it should do better job next time. We may make such significant cut, which have such negative impact to the community. We can really from, sorry. Okay. I just want to, we make sure we do the proper consultation from the community, try to listen to the public before we make such impactful cuts to the services. Overall, I think is a very good motion, but I still want to have one last question to ask. After we passing this motion, if we pass the motion, what's the actual deficit we have right now? I just need a number.
Thank you, and through the chair. So currently our deficit is 43.5 million. If you pass $17 million of reductions, we will be at 26.5 million.
Yes, through Madam Chair, if we use that to proceed, like, we have, so what's the actual number, like $10 million? I think last time we are talking about like we use some proceed, for disposing some properties, like 15.9 million. So we still have $10 million deficit. Am I correct?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, the reason I'm not including the proceeds of disposition is because we do need approval from the ministry to use them. And in preliminary discussions, we would have to be at a balanced budget in order to even, I think, have that conversation. So I just want us to be aware. Staff would say that the maximum proceeds that should be used is 22 million. So at minimum, there would be $4.5 million in reductions required, and then a request to the ministry to use $22 million of proceeds of disposition.
Okay, great. Thank you much, also Director Zucker. And thank you, Madam Chair. I think I finished my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any other speakers on the list. So we are going to start voting on item number, to remind myself what we're on, 3.44, I think we're on. Is that right? 3.34? 3.54. And so just a reminder, we're going to do part A ad seriatim, part B ad seriatim, and then we're going to do C, D, E all together. Correct. So if we could put up A1 on the screen and open eScribe, please.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Through the chair, Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Madam Chair, Trustee Lee is in favor, and my eScribe doesn't pop up.
Madam Chair, Trustee Hassan is in favor as well. Hastings in favor.
Patel in favor.
So this is number A, right? A1. A1 against. Thank you.
And that has carried. Okay, we're going to open A2, please. Why is my eScribe doing this? This is school renewal, just for anybody who can't see the screen. Anyone who has aging eyes.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Patel in favor.
Deloitte in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor. Hassan in favor.
Arts in favor.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Hastings in favor.
Thank you. And that has carried. Item number A3 will be up next for voting. eScribe is just opening. And this one is regarding supporting staff self-wellness. eScribe is open.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Hastings, how do you vote?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that has carried. Next, we're going to move up. We're going to move up to B1. Feels like we're playing bingo. Okay, and just to remind everyone, this is regarding the one-to-one devices. This is on staff bringing us back some options.
Through the chair, Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Ghost is in favor.
Trustee Payne in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Hassan, we didn't hear clearly what you said.
Madam Chair, I said I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. Trustee King.
Hastings in favor.
Thank you. We're missing Trustee King and Trustee Rajagulasingham.
I'm in favor, thank you.
Thank you. We got everybody? And that has carried. We're now on item B2. This is on the International Languages Program.
Trustee Ghost is in favor.
Through the chair, Trustee Nunziata is in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Pay and Trustee Hastings, we need your votes.
Trustee Payne in favor.
Hastings in favor.
I think that was in favor. And that has carried. We're now on item B3. This is regarding the general interest seniors daytime courses.
Through the chair, Trustee Nunziata is in favor.
Trustee Ghost is in favor.
Trustee Payne in favor.
Trustee Hassan and Trustee Hastings, how do you vote?
Hastings, yes. Hassan in favor.
Thank you. And that has carried. We're on number B4. The vote is now open on B4. This is regarding SOAS.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Payne in favor.
Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Hastings, we need your vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you. And we're now on the last one from section B. This is B5. This is on regarding permits. And the vote is open, trustees.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Bay in favor.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Trustee Hastings,
Hey.
how do you vote?
Hastings, yes.
Thank you. And that has carried. Okay, so we're now going to do C, D, and E all together as a final vote in this motion. The vote is now open, trustees.
Trustee Ghost in favor.
Hassan in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Hastings, yes.
Trustee Earhart in favor.
And that has carried unanimously. Before we move to adjournment, I just would like to thank all the staff who have worked so hard on all of these items. I know we're not done yet. We're now like at an interlude for a little bit. There's a lot of work to be done coming out of this motion, and a lot of work still to come to get to June 30th as we await the GSNs. I also just want to thank Trustee Patel and Trustee DeVitis for leading FBEC to get us to today. And I would just like to note the time because I'm really proud of us. I believe it's 8:02. I would have liked to get it done by 8, but we still have adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Did somebody say on the screen, did anybody hear?
Can I be heard on adjournment?
Only once because we didn't move.
You've already spoken.
I believe there was Trustee Patel who put up his hand to adjourn. Is there somebody at home who wants an adjournment as well?
Trustee
I
Lee,
do. I want to open
Yes,
my
I do. I do as well.
Many. Everybody's fighting for it. All right. Thank you, everybody. And I wish you all a good evening with your found time. And thank you to Munshu and to Denise and to Araz and to Mensch, who is working remotely, and everybody else who makes these meetings run, as well as the caretaking staff and the security staff. And thank you to the members of the public who are with us today, both online and outside.
You did a good job.
And thank you to my vice chair, who was very helpful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
evening.
everybody. Good night.